One that's like bang for buck important would be the properties. So whenever you look at a type of schema, they'll take some properties. The most common ones are obviously like name, URL, those kind of things. But one of the things I say is the most underrated and the best performing from what I've tested is the one that is the most common mistakes people have is that so schema should be seen as it's almost like a representative that you have good systems design, good analytics, good data, good clean outputs and stuff. This is what the purpose of schema is for you to take something that is implicit, that Google can see and make to understand, and be explicit. But this is where most people fundamentally misunderstand and misapply schema, right? And it's actually better to not be an FAQ page for ranking reasons than an FAQ. You've changed it from a commercial intent to an informational intent. This applies for every website, not just iGaming, but it is probably technically the most important one is the organization and website schema on every single page. Essentially, like you can enhance very specific parts based on the @ID property of different properties of the schema.
Can you share an example from a stake where schema led to some measurable gains?
Sure, so I'll give two examples. The thing is, some people are really bad at schema. So like those mechanisms that Google do automatically or make assumption for are sometimes better than what the SEO is doing. The goal is to increase clicks in the end of the day.
Breaking news.
Odys is selling 86% of their inventory to over 40,000 verified buyers, and most of it are instant sales. Are you sitting on a premium H domain? Sign up for Odys Marketplace right now and wait for your check.
Hi, welcome back to Odys Podcast. My name is Aneta Samkov and we are at Chiang Mai SEO 2025. And my guest today is Peter Macinkovic, Head of SEO at Stake.
Hello, welcome. Lovely to be here with you again.
Yes, and today's topic, schema for iGaming. I'm really excited for that.
I'm excited as well. Schema is one of my favorite topics to talk about.
Awesome. So tell us, why is schema so important for iGaming websites?
So schema is structured data, and that provides semantic context for search engines to understand what content is really about and what it represents. And for iGaming, it's kind of crucial because we're dealing with an incredibly complex and dynamic content. Like you have thousands of different casino games, you have sporting events, streaming content, and it's a lot of page churn and context is gain loss all over the place. And also, you also have like regulatory jurisdictions where you have to clarify things. So it gets really, really complicated. So without schema, what happens with Google is that they just see a wall of HTML and they see JavaScript, and it's up to Google to figure it all out. And Google's very strong and very capable of doing that. It's what they do. But it also can be confused. And this is what the purpose of schema is for you to take something that is implicit, that Google can see and make to understand, and be explicit. You're saying this is the true context, this is what the page is about, or this is how this page relates to another page or another concept. And that's why it's so important, because like we have in iGaming, you have high competition keywords, you have keywords that have a lot of volatility. So it's a lot of very time sensitive stuff. It's like in and out pages, rank pages die. And schema can also provide you the context to like have a page be in the index quickly and to be understood quickly instead of relying on the various Google mechanisms, which take a long time.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
So how is schema markup different from traditional SEO tactics like keyword optimization?
Yeah, so this is where most people fundamentally misunderstand and misapply schema, right? So when you try to match keyword, you're doing normal SEO, you try to match the query to the intent. So you would optimize like the title tags, you find little gaps and then you label it, right? Like you say, okay, I want to target this keyword, I put it in the title or I'll put it in the text of the body. Whereas schema is all about building relationships between pages and concepts and understanding. So you have to understand what things are and then how they relate to each other. Okay. So traditional SEO is quite reactive. You're reacting to what you get for search volume. You're reacting to what you want to target, those kind of things. Whereas schema is proactive, where you say, this is the context represent and how it fits into a larger scheme of things. So this is like a large web of interconnectability. And that's the key difference. So Google is really, really smart most of the time. They can identify these contexts through many, many other mechanisms. You can read the patterns and those kind of things, but without any schema markup, Google will make a lot of assumptions on your website. Yeah, but with schema, you can actually correct Google or provide them additional context that you won't be relying on Google's internal mechanisms to connect the dots. So and the thing is, some people are really bad at schema. So those mechanisms that Google do automatically or make assumptions for are sometimes better than what the SEO is doing. Okay. So Google might accidentally think that your page is about a more important thing and you actually benefit from it. Then the SEO does this micro optimization and they actually kill important ranking. So that's, but that's the real important thing about schema is to actually communicate what's the obvious part of the page, but also connect it to the broader things about how the relationships are used, how they're connected, how they're part of a hierarchy on not only your website, but also externally from your website. So that's the kind of difference there. So people make the mistake where they treat schema as a labeling task. I have this parameter, I have this field that belongs to the organization. I need to fill this out. The same way you would do keyword stuffing. And that's a mislabeling of it. You need to actually think about it from a strategic standpoint of how the knowledge graph works and how things connect. So it should be more of, it's almost like building a highway system or something like that, something that's more interconnectability and how things flow, as opposed to it's not point scoring for SEO.
Okay. So what are the most common mistakes you see people make with schema?
So the most common mistakes people have is that they pursue the rich results of Google, so the enhancements at all costs. So Google have gone out and made corrections for this, but if everyone will remember when FAQ page schema and how-to page schema was done. Now, based on the spec, that is an incorrect implementation of it, but people want that for the real estate, right? For CTR enhancements. So that is the goal there. So what they would do is they would erroneously write FAQ, they'll occupy the SERPs, and I guess it was good strategically for hacking the SERPs and having the stars and those kind of things. But what it does is actually destroys the context, because FAQ page is actually a very specific type of web page. So you might be adding FAQ page to something that is a PLP, a category page, so a list of games, a list of hairdryers, a list of whatever. And it's actually better to not be an FAQ page for ranking reasons than an FAQ. You've changed it from a commercial intent to an informational intent, where the better thing would be a comparison article, but you're an e-commerce brand, you should actually be targeting the purchasing intent because you make more money and you rank better. So they're actually, in doing the enhancements for chasing the schema, like the little micro optimizations to look presentable, they've actually heard it. And there's other ways to get that real estate. If you have good schema implementation like we do, one of the things that people always ask me about when we do it is because you always get site links. So when you Google a keyword on us, even a deep page, we always see stake.com's casino page, but then you have 4 or 5 links underneath it. That's because of our good schema and internal linking. That's actually a mechanism of good system design. And we get the same results of occupying the SERP real estate. So not just the one Google result, but Google result with site links underneath it. It takes up a lot of real estate and better click-through rates that go to better pages, because the people make that decision to go to, instead of the main page that was ranking, but this nested page was actually more specific and what they truly wanted. That's the mistake that people make, is that they keep pursuing this hyper optimization, but they don't actually think about the bigger picture. So they actually shoot themselves in the foot and de-rank, or actually make their page less competitive for ranking in the first place.
Oh, wow. So what are the most common types of schema that are most beneficial for iGaming sites?
So there's some most common types for every website, and then there's some very specifically for iGaming. So especially if you do sports betting, for example, the most important one is event schema, specifically the subtype of sports event. So the way schema works, you have these types. So everything is a thing. So schema.org/thing, capital T. And everything else is derived from that. So when you go to an event, so schema.org/event, when you scroll down to the bottom, they actually have very specific types of events. So you might have a musical event, those kind of events. There is a special one for sports event, and that is the best one for individual sporting matches. So that one where we have pages that, I might explain this later on, but we have pages that have a very, very short lifespan, sometimes less than a day, sometimes less than a week.
Oh, wow.
And we rank, well, it's kind of random depending on how competitive the term is. You're competing with newspaper websites writing match previews, but oftentimes we would rank in the very short window when that event is available. And that gets, even in position 5, if we're fortunate enough to be in the first page, we'll get the same CTR as position 1, so 25 to 30%, because it's the only gambling result. Everything else is like a match preview, that kind of stuff. But it's a gambling result in the first page, has a CTR. And it's because of like back when we had rich results with the events, we would have like a list under like the soccer, and it will have those kind of things. So that one is actually the most important one, because it is the best competitive real estate for something that's time sensitive. So competition is very weak, and having good schema makes you very, very strong. The other ones are like, we have for casino games, we use the video game schema paired with item type schema. So each individual casino games page is an item page, which is a very specific sub page. It means it's a page about a very specific individual thing. And we have the main entity of that being video game. So it's very, very, very obviously hitting the intent for playing. We have very, very specific action. We label the actions that people can play a game. We have the specifications of the game. There's all these kind of things that enhance it. And that's quite important for iGaming. Like I don't see that done anywhere except for some affiliates who do it. Yeah. Cause like not many casinos have, I think actually, to be honest, I might double check, but I don't think any casino does it well other than us.
Really?
Like, yeah, I got the idea from copying like review websites. Like I got my inspiration to do our content and our schema strategy for casino games based on people writing like reviews of casino games.
Wow.
But applied it to how an operator should do it. So that's why we're very successful. We're probably the best, we are the best casino at ranking individual third-party games. Like we're the only ones who try at our level, at that level of excellence. And then for every single website, this applies for every website, not just iGaming, but it is probably technically the most important one, is the organization and website schema on every single page. So the way that we design schema is that you can join different schema elements together. So you can write a short script for JSON-LD for your organization, and you have a @ID property, and you give it a little label. So we use #stake.org for our stake organization schema. And that means you can reuse anything that requires an organization property anywhere else on the website. So if we had to use who is the owner, who is the this, who is the that, and that requires an organization, you just do @ID #stake.org, and it reuses the schema again and again.
Oh, that makes much sense.
Yeah, so you don't have to write. This is the big problem. People always write things into some massive things, but it's all about using reusable parts. And the same thing for the website. So we have very specific schema for what the website is. So stake.com as a domain. Then you have the organization, and then you join them to the individual web page. So every web page is a web page schema. That's actually what Google assumes by default. So even if you didn't write any schema, it assumes a web page. And you use stuff like is part of, which is a property, to say this web page is part of the stake.com website. The stake.com website has an organization that is stake.com, which is the business. And then that's available on every page. And you can reuse, especially the organization one, for different parts. So the casino games, casino groups, sports, blog, everything else can actually be reused as reusable parts.
That's really cool. Is there any type of schema that is rarely used, like something out of the box that you really like?
So it's less about the schema, more about the property. So every single type of schema, so you have like say the page, the web page, and those kind of ones. So if I would answer that, it's the more specific types of web page. But the one that's like bang for buck important would be the properties. So whenever you look at a type of schema, they'll take some properties. The most common ones are obviously like name, URL, those kind of things. But one of the things I say is the most underrated and the best performing from what I've tested, because I use the ones I've done like a lot of testing over many, many years. I know which ones move the needle or not, is the one that is subject-of schema, which is the inverse of about schema. So in SEO, there's a lot of discussion about using about schema. So this page is about this entity. And it's very, very common. It'll be like, we have this page about slot games. You might, if there's a Wikipedia article, you say the about of the slots Wikipedia article or the casino Wikipedia one. And that provides context for this page is about this entity. But in the subject of schema is the opposite way. It means that this external article is about this page. And this is basically your backlinks. So you can say you have a slot page and say Stake's got the best slot game inventory of 3,500 as a ranking page and ranks well for like some slots keyword. I can say subject of, this article or this comparison article, and I can pump that up for like 5 or 6 links. And basically I'm saying that this individual page is the subject of this authoritative article externally, And that actually amplifies not only from a link standpoint, but also the entity flow for this article has made declarations about our brand and our entity. And we make the connection that we're really authoritative on casino games or online gambling. This has happened a lot with the online gambling keyword. So for us on Stake, no matter what the algorithm updates happen, we're routinely number one for online gambling, and we don't try to rank for that keyword. It's all based on entity stuff. So Stake as a brand is so synonymous with the term online gambling. Like Stake is online gambling, the same way that Kleenex is for tissue, according to in Google's brain. And we don't have a single title, maybe some blog post, but we don't have a single title that says online gambling on it. On the title tag, none. In the homepage, which is the ranking page, because it's for our website, it's obvious. It's one little line that's very, very specific. It says, Stake.com is a leader in online gambling since 2017. That's the only text that references online gambling on the page. On the page, that's the only combination for that term. And we rank for that term no matter what because of the brand association. Yeah. So it's because of these things, because the external articles, and we reference those external articles to our entities. So if you look at our schema, you look at our organization, we reference things that talk about how much money we made. We talk about our founders. We talk about those ones with that subject of schema. What that does is actually we've built a very, very strong association with the idea of certain terms with our brand that I don't even have to do SEO for that term. No matter what the algorithm update happens, that term has been the most stable term because in Google's mind, this only happens with very specific terms. We're almost like the dictionary definition for online gambling. When you think of online gambling, you should think of Stake.
Yeah. So you gave us one example of schema and how you implement. Can you share a little bit more?
For iGaming, absolutely. Yeah. So I gave the example for a specific game, but let's talk about listed games. So our casino games collection. So we call it casino groups, but this will be what you would call a PLP in e-commerce. So a list of products or a list of games in our case. So the way you best think about it is that if you have a list of a web page, so a casino group page, we would have say 30 games on one page, and then you go next page or load more, etc., etc. So the way our website's custom built, it's on a thing called SpellKit, but all you need to know is that think of everything on the page as little building blocks. So we know that if we go to Pragmatic Play, who's one of the publishers of the game, so think of them as a brand like Apple, but for gaming. So Pragmatic Play, like the Apple of iGaming, they'll have, hundreds or if not thousands of games. But so we will have a list of, say, 30 on the first page of their main page. So it would be the first 30 games of Pragmatic Play. So as a web page, we use a very specific web page called collection page. This is one of the 10 subtypes of the web page schema, which means that this page is intended to be a list of pages. So it is, in this case, a list of games. And then in that very specific example, you would say that main entity is an item list. So it's a list of items. And then each of those item list element, which is the individual item, is a video game. So then you list all of those ones out. And the good thing about doing this systemically is that based on the data, the system is designed this way. So we know what the games are showing up. It's in the system. So we just have to convert that data into schema. So it will generate. So we will have an array of games. There'll be 20 or 30 games and they will list to it. And then each one of those items will use a version of the main item, like the video game schema. It wouldn't be the full one because it doesn't have the content and stuff, but it'll be list the name of the game, main entity, and some certain features that you just know is true. You know it's a HTML5 game. You know you can play or gamble on it, etc. And then that way you can be able to generate that. And that has been something I've been using for 8 years. It's a technique I use a lot in e-commerce. And because for the reason when people looked at our rankings and we saw that we ranked, at the time, not anymore, it's very volatile these days, but we ranked number 1 for slots, number 1 for live casino, number 1 for all these groups. It's because our group page is really well designed because we're attacking the intent that when someone searches for the slot game or casino games, those two keywords, they're looking for a list of games. And we just emphasize that this is the accurate and thorough list, swear on my heart, this is 100% the list of the games, and you can trust us with this representation of that. And it also helps out the individual games. So the games that happen to be the first get a little extra authority, not authority, they get a little extra enhancement because they're prominently paced.
Yeah.
And then that kind of cascades down because we have over 180 of those categories on the website.
Wow.
So like it goes very, very narrow. It goes to like Halloween themed or like Greek themed games, etc. Or like very specific features like bonus buy, cascading, mega ways, those kind of features. So the goal for that is to primarily rank the page as the first goal, but then because the pages are strong and they provide this communication, is to rank the individual games that happen to be apparent. Our goal is for every single game to at least be visible in that first page result for an individual group, even if it's like the lowest, least popular game it is, because at least to show it for its own provider. So that's our goal, is to communicate that. Some games will be very favorable just because they're popular. They might show up in 13 different categories in the top list. So they're naturally going to be very, very high traffic and very, very popular. But that schema of that page helps its own primary rankings, but also helps the rankings for the individual games.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. So how do you generate schema at stake for so many pages?
Yeah, so it's more about a system design as opposed to doing it. So like, it's not like we have like an AI automation to generate it on the fly. That's the incorrect mechanism for it. The way you would divide it is the same way that the engineering works. So we know that this page, if it's casino/game/the slug, that's a casino game page. We know a casino group page. We know a individual sport page. We know the individual sport tournament or league, so like the Premier League or something like that. We know the individual fixtures, which I mentioned earlier, and we know the blog posts, we know the promotions, we know all of those things. So based on each type, we generate the schema based on what the data will come in. So we know what the type of data will come in. So it comes in as a big JSON payload, very, very big block of data. So we know that the name of the category, we know the list, we know this, this, and this. And then based on that type, it doesn't matter if we have one game on the website, 4,000 games or 40,000 games, it will all generate accurately based on the template and the design.
Okay.
So I designed it for, I think, 12 or 13 different page types for stake.com. And there's still some to go. There's still, a horse racing section, for example, is missing that because it's a little bit complex. It's like, it's not very clear that the way we've done horse racing is very, very easy to apply a schema for. So it's like, sometimes it's challenging for me as well. But when you design a system like this, then that way you could actually have really, really good systems. And these are all the ones that are generated, and that's our default schema. So our default state is already at a very, very high level. But to enhance it, and then that kind of stuff, we have our content management system, which is called Sanity, but you can use any content management system where with the generated JSON that we have, we can actually apply other JSON that we can add to the page. So it's an additional JSON, the schema markup, and that would use @ID joins to add it. So say by default, all of our casino games have 2 breadcrumbs, all of them are the same one, because we don't know the hierarchy by default. It's impossible. So we know that they're a casino game and there might be a slot or there might be a live casino game. There's a mechanism to determine one or the other. And then based on that, we know 2 levels deep to add a 3rd or 4th level deep, because manually we would know that this is a bonus buy feature or mega ways feature, or this is a Greek themed game or something like that. In our schema, we just do @ID, the casino game, whatever it's like stake game or whatever the game schema is. I forget the top of my head. And we say breadcrumbs, and we just do the 3rd and 4th one, and it merges the 1 and 2 and the 3 and 4 together. And then it does it automatically. So essentially we're pointing at, so we have like hash breadcrumbs as the ID. We have 2 of those and they join together. And that's, it's really difficult to do without an illustration, but like essentially like you can enhance very specific parts based on the @ID property of different properties of the schema. So that way you can insert yourselves of it. So the good example of this I would use is for a tournament. Let's use the French league. I did this as a French league, for example. So League 1. So we have those generated schema, and like same with the casino games I mentioned earlier, each individual team is visible. So we might have Monaco, you might have PSG, and they'll have PSG versus Monaco. And the generated one, we just know which teams are playing. So we have like team PSG, team Monaco. But if I know how many teams there are in the French league, which is the same all year, the same 20 teams, then on the main page, I could actually do the schema for Team Monaco, team that one, and say how big the stadium is, how many people, how long the team's been around, who's the star players, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So that every single time, even though the teams are playing are different, because on the main page on the bottom, I have every team out, all 20 teams labeled. You can then join that to the individual fixture. You can say Monaco versus PSG. Suddenly gets expanded because it's referencing the existing code that always will appear all year on the bottom of that page. So it magically enhances stuff. So that's how, and with the way to generate the manual enhancements, I use Airtable to generate them for very specific ones. So we have basically a spreadsheet, but it's a more fancier spreadsheet where the team members of my team can fill in details like I mentioned the subjectOf schema. So they'll do research and see if there was an article on this particular game that's like not a competitor. and then they'll be able to fill that out and it'll generate the JSON to add to our CMS. So I've designed it very specific for our function.
Wow.
Very, very easy to use. They'll just generate that and they can knock out 50 in like an hour and a half, and then they can just add it manually within our content management system.
That is great.
Yeah.
So what is your process for developing and testing schema implementations?
Oh, so like developing it is a whole thing. That's a spec document. I write it for developers. So I write a whole document and I go page type by page type to develop it very, very specifically. And then when we test it on Screaming Frog for scale. So we have JSON LD enabled for testing. We have a high level, and that's just purely for validation. But then we also take it and put it in validated.schema.org. We take maybe 2 or 3 sample pages, and then we try to mess with it. We try to say, okay, what happens when this data is missing? What happens if this one's there? Because we try to find the failure states for it. Because one of the difficult things for people to know is that schema is very brittle. So the example I would use is that, say, an event schema is very specific. You need to have a location, for example. But not every single location is known in a format you can have.
Yeah.
So what happens when there's no available location? Well, I happen to know some tricks. Like, for example, if there's no location for the validation for rich results, you could just pass in location @ID equals hash location or something like that. Just basically it's an @ID and you're referencing something that doesn't exist. That validates in Google. So so it passes the rich results validation because you're technically validating it. They just assume, oh, maybe it's a client side thing. Maybe I didn't see it or whatever, but you won't get the negative validation for the rich results. You still pass it. Now they've solved that particular example with virtual location these days. There's actually a beta for, like eligible property for the location field specifically for events for virtual location, because this is something I had to deal with Kick.com and live streaming, because live streaming don't have a physical location and you don't want to share a physical location, but it is a broadcast event. So with the broadcast event, which is a more specific event parameter, this is the required one. That's a beta property, but it's completely usable. But it's like those kind of tricks is the things that you have to think about to validate. So when we're designing the schema, I have this huge document. I say, developer, this is what we do for name. This is what we do with that. This is the main entity. These properties are the ones we do. And in case of error, don't render this property or render it in this way. And then so I test it in all the failure states, and that's all me working with engineers, which is fine. Or even members of my team. I have members of my team who could do this now. They're quite capable as well. They were trained by me, so they should be able to do it. And then when we test it out, we always monitor as well. We do like weekly crawls with Screaming Frog to make sure some things can break, because sometimes you might have server-side rendering issues, and that would mess up the rendering of JSON and stuff like that. So you just have to test that. But it's not the end of the world if it's broken, unless you're really trying to do the rich results. The rich results are very strict. For example, the one for live video is very difficult, and Google also changes their mind. Everyone who's worked with rich results noticed that Google might change the specification, especially in e-commerce, but for live broadcast, they changed it on us. They used to have broadcast event contains a video object, and they swapped it around. A video object has to contain a broadcast event. So you have to just keep up with them.
So what is your approach to schema strategy for new sites versus auditing existing ones?
Yeah, sure. So primarily I'm a schema designer and architect. So I always redo it in my strict way as opposed to auditing. But I always view like what I can do from a quick wins from a site-wide standpoint. So I mentioned the combination of organization and website schema earlier. That is almost never done correctly, or they're not done with JSON LD and in a rescalable way. And that's one of the first things I do, because that applies to any industry, anything. I give this, like every single time I talk to an SEO about that one, I give that small example of how to do that, because it's the single most practical thing. And it's honestly the thing that has the most impact, and it's not that complicated to do. It's literally two types of schema, and then how you implement web page schema from that. That's the complicated part. But even if you just didn't do it properly, you don't have to do the joins like I do. If you just did website schema on every page and organization schema, Google has mechanisms to figure that out. So that's the single most important thing. I then kind of break up pages by page type. So even if it's a comparison website, or even if it's e-commerce, or even if it's iGaming or whatever, I would say these are the game pages. These are the list of the list of games. And then these are the information pages. So I kind of put pages into those kind of buckets. And then that's the kind of way I would generate schema. I often would do it my style, but that's unique to me. But I also recommend, if you can, use JSON LD throughout. If you're still using the old microdata format, that is too reliant on very, very specific HTML markup. I used to prefer it this way, but I've learned that this is less scalable and less movable. So the good thing about JSON LD, because it's scripting and you can just add it into the body of the DOM, is not visible on the page. Even if you can reference very specific types on the page using like speakable markup, or there's other special selectors for it using XPath and CSS selector properties in the web page element and web page elements. But I would just keep it simple and just say what would apply site-wide. With organization websites, almost universal. And then I would just focus on very specific page types that are the moving mechanisms, and think about how it would, like if you were to go from 1 page to 1,000 of these pages, and how that would change all the permutations, and then find the common elements of it. So name is always 100%, URL is always 100%. These are safe for every single thing. But for blog posts, it might be publish date. You might know publish date. So great, every single blog post must have a publish date. So you find the common elements that no matter what, it could be 1 or a million. These are the ones for this page type. I must have its properties. And then everything else is an enhancement over that. So that's where I would start.
Nice. So how do you prioritize pages for schema markup?
So prioritization is about business need and indexing needs. So like I said before, Google has a lot of strong mechanisms for it. Even if you didn't apply schema, if you did every other SEO thing in the world and Google loved your website and was smart, it would essentially add the schema, not formally, to the website. It will understand, it thinks your page is about this. So you have a strong landing page. It's server-side rendered. It has all the greatest backlinks in the world, greatest internal linking in the world. You don't actually need schema for that unless you're chasing a very specific SERP enhancement or something like that. But the ones that you would need for business priority are the ones that I mentioned that need to be indexed quickly, or need to have a very, very short lifespan, or have a lot of risk of being confused with another type of page. So you might have one type of page that might be reviews, one might be videos, one might be that, and they're all very similar in structure. That's where Google might get confused. It might think the video is the review, or it might think this is the this. So that will be your differentiator. The best one for that is just the title text, but when that is the golden one where you could actually declare this is a list type of page, or this is a user profile page, and that gets in the mix. The thing that so priority is the ones where schema would actually solve the problem. So schema solves the problem for us for fixtures and sporting events and those list pages that had there. That's whenever we launch 25 new casino games every single week. We have at any time on the website 1,500 to 2,000 individual sporting matches on, essentially. And those are the pages that the schema is the most important, because it communicates that something has changed versus the last time they looked. And it also gives Google an incentive to check the stuff that's changed. Yeah, so that's the signal that you want to send. A blog post, if something doesn't have a publish date, a static landing page, doesn't really need it. To be honest, you can do it for a micro enhancement, but not if you want to say business priority wise, it has to be this mechanism type stuff. That's the main value of schema solving an SEO problem.
Oh, cool. So have you actually or can you share an example from stake where schema led to some measurable gains?
Sure. So I'll give two examples. One where it's a rich result that no longer exists. So RIP, but it was really, really great. So I gave example of sports event schema before for the individual fixtures. So what happened was that was event schema. So you would have something like soccer matches, and we were ranking really well for soccer betting, at the time when this schema was active, especially in Canada and other countries as well. And what would happen is you'll have that schema, and then you'll have like 3 of the matches that's happening like very, very soon. And that changed all the time. And that was really, really great for CTR. If we happened to rank for that, people would often click on the individual fixture. If it was accurate, if it said like 18th of July, like this one's happening very soon, they would click on that instead of the main URL, like the site link.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that had really, really good CTR and outperformed the ones that didn't have that by significant percentage. Wow. Even when it wasn't ranking number 1, like it also ate up real estate and stuff. So we would get like, instead of say 7 to 12% CTR, you might get something in the 15 to 25% range, depending on the keyword, because even if you weren't ranking well, so you were performing as if you were number 1. If you were number 1, it was great. Like the one when you were number 1 is great. They got rid of that schema, but like that's the mechanism that we have on our website, because every single page we have, except for a few sections like horse racing I mentioned, has schema. That same goal can also be applied, but not with rich results, but with site links. So that's the thing that people they notice on Stake, they notice on Kick. The thing that we differentiate when you Google our terms is that we have site links. So you have those ones there. And that does the exact same thing as that mechanism does. Like even better, to be honest, in some keywords, because you occupy real estate and you're serving up things that people want to click on. So that it happens even multiple results. Like if you Google, like I did some testing for specific things, like where we were mentioning online gambling on our website, and this site colon, the first result and the second result, they're all stake.com results, but the first 2 results both had site links, even for an internal result. And I'm just like, no one else can do this because they don't have the systems for that. It's like some other SEOs are quite capable, but like most big, enormous, complicated websites don't have this, and we do. And it's so much because for our main keywords that we rank for, online casino, online gambling, those kind of ones, a significant percent of them go to those site links there. I actually have a Python script where I look at our clicks and I find which keywords and clicks are actually to site links. And it's a significant percent. It's like surprising amount, because it's only supposed to be 1 or 2%. But for certain keywords in certain countries and certain URLs that surface up in the site link, they can sometimes be 5% of the total clicks of the thing. So instead of like, say if you had 25% CTR, 20%, well, maybe 5% is actually to like this sub one, which is actually more popular than the main keyword. So that's the main benefit I see with implementing schema.
Oh, that's really cool example.
Yeah.
So I was thinking with iGaming, where you have such a different regulations depending on the region. Like, are there any issues with schema where you have to like geo-target?
Some of it will be really tricky when you're sharing schema across the main product. So for example, I mentioned we have organization schema, we have, and very specifically casino type schema, and we have website schema. And that when we work on stake.com, but we list stuff like available currency. So like we say Bitcoin and those kind of things, BTC, we mention certain things there. And just from a compliance standpoint, you might have to hide things that you can't offer. So you can't offer, if you don't offer BTC, even if it's not visible to the user, but it's in the HTML, you have to kind of hide that. You can mention stake as an entity sometimes, but maybe you can't mention it by URL. You mention stake as an entity itself, and you have to rely on Google. So you might have the organization for a regulated market. So we just say country X is its own one, and it can reference parent org, which is its parent organization would be stake, but that one won't be as enhanced as the stake.com version. So you have to be very, very careful for that one. So it's very, very similar mechanisms. And a lot of it has to do with compliance, whether or not you can or can't say certain things. And they do come up with compliance during a website launch in a regular markets. We go through compliance checks. So there'll be various channels, various things. And people will flag to me, oh, we saw the word Bitcoin here. We can't say that. It's like, well, that's just in the schema, but yep, it's gone. So that's kind of things. Yeah.
Wow. So from the C-suite perspective, how would you pitch schema to C-levels, and what kind of ROI can they expect from it?
So I reframe it as a systems perspective, right? So Schema isn't like it's not a separate project that we have to do. Like it only was a project the first time I did it, right? The Schema should be part of whenever we create a new feature or whenever we add something in there. And if they have availability to do so, and it's very, very clear to do so. So if we can, the mindset should be, if we can do analytics, we can do Schema because the data is the same. So we send data if someone clicks on a fixture, we say what fixtures appeared on this page of that. So that data is in the payload. So for us to do that and adding an actual generated JSON output for it, we already have the templates to do that. And we have that. So it shouldn't be like, we shouldn't have it as a ROI standpoint. It's like, well, this is why our sportsbook's so successful and it's not available in horse racing. Now, sometimes you do come across like real limitations. Like, for example, we don't have it in horse racing. I keep mentioning we don't have it in horse racing. And it's literally because this sportsbook team who will implement that are very busy implementing features. And it's also with the current implementation of horse racing, it's not a copy and paste for what we did in sports. So it's, like even I would have trouble doing the ROI for it. It's like my time isn't available for it. It's like if I believed in it, but there's other high priority SEO things I'd rather fix on horse racing, then I would get to Schema. So Schema should be seen as, it's almost like a representative that you have good systems design, good analytics, good data, good clean outputs and stuff. Like it's something that would help clarify. And if you have things that are very weak in indexing, very weak in time sensitive stuff, or take a long time because you're relying, like without being explicit in Schema, you're relying on Google's mechanisms, and Google's mechanisms take quite a while. They're like crawl the page, then they'll calculate it at a high level. Then they calculate things at a more specific level when they know it. And then after like 3 or 4 months, they have a pretty good feeling without it. But if you want to shave a lot of that work that Google has to do, like connecting the dots all across the internet and using its big robot brain to calculate this stuff, having Schema can help speed up that process if you're trustworthy. If you are not trustworthy, similar to, this is true for sitemaps and everything, then Google will ignore your Schema, actually. Yeah. So if you abuse Schema, this is why like with sitemaps and Schema, you don't lie, basically. You should be truthful. Yeah, and it's not that hard.
Wow. So is there like a one metric you should associate with Schema?
I use indexability, generally speaking, but that's the way where I do it there. Like you can do the enhanced SERP features. You can do it as a high level. You can, if you can directly attribute it, see it CTR for a very specific schema type, like with or without, that's great, but you shouldn't do it on a scale. Like it's not something that you should report on because that's very, very volatile. And that's also very dependent on the query, individual queries and those kind of things. Like Google Search Console has some rich results filters on it, but it's not good enough to report on that. So whenever you have something that you don't have confidence in reporting with that level of granularity, I always say don't show that to people who are not SEOs. Like it's generally a bad situation because that what will routinely happen is Google will change something in their filtering and you won't be able to report on that metric anymore. So I use indexability. I have great indexability, and I always say that Schema and sitemaps and all these internal linkings are part of that process, and that's how I'm able to report the value of it. Other people might, if they're more for rich results enhancements, then that would be the main thing. And then they could use CTR. So that would be things like, if you want to have a full like image that's available in these SERPs and stuff, and that occupies CT and improves CTR or improves real estate, that would be the metric. The problem is that is very difficult. It's very difficult to 100% attribute that. So I always advise using it as a reporting metric to C-suite or whoever else.
Wow, okay, cool. So schema trends typically follow what Google promotes with rich results. What do you wish more iGaming SEOs would focus on instead? And like, why don't you think it will not become a trend?
Yeah, so that's the problem, is that everyone always looks at Schema as like little markups on SERPs, right? Yeah. And I wish that they approached it the way I would think of it, where your goal is to generate things like site links and then show those little signals there, because they achieve, the problem is where people pursue things like how-to schema, FAQ schema, little enhancements to that, they what they're trying to do is to increase real estate, to increase CTR. So the goal is to increase clicks in the end of the day. Yeah. But they don't realize that if you just did schema properly, more often than not, you actually will occupy more real estate by having site links appear because you have better connections to your website and Google has stronger confidence in you. So I want them to think about more of like a system. I want them to think about each individual type of page and how to do like the one that would do it in its most generic, like from 1 page to 1 million page. This will be what a casino game page is, or a product page is on e-commerce, or a blog post. I want them to say that's how this page it is. I want them to think about how that connects internally. I want them to think about how that connects externally, like using that subject-of schema or the same as schema, any of the ones that will point to external entities. And I want their goal to be to look in the SERPs to have more real estate through site links. Site links are to me my favorite enhancement. I think it's better than the little FAQ. I always hated the FAQ schema. I hated the how-to schema. Like in e-commerce, you can have like the reviews and stuff like that, but everything gets gamed. And the problem is that people game that. Whereas site links is enhancing what Google naturally thinks of your website. So it should always be good unless it's like the Disney Plus example, which I don't know when this will be released, but no longer, where if someone built backlinks to Disney Plus and they got the black hat SEO packages on Disney Plus's SERPs. But that's the whole point, is that this is really, really good real estate. And that is the thing that I want people to think about, because the problem is whatever Google will say, hey, this is a new feature, that's what the SEOs will always pursue. But I want them to pursue like actually what works best with relationships, actually joining stuff. Like the simple example, like they do all this stuff, but they don't do this most simple example with having website organization schema and web page together as a triangle. That's the single most important thing. And most people skip it, even though most SEOs are more than smart and capable of doing that. And I want them to focus on that. So don't do your best, do my best.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing and all that great information with the examples from stakes. I'm sure this is going to be very helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for more episodes like that, subscribe to our Odys channel and follow Peter on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Thank you. See you next time.
Bye.